Every day we meet people who test our patience, challenge our peace, and sometimes even try to pull us into their storms. But here is the truth. No one has the power to disturb you unless you hand them the keys to your mind.
Control the inner, accept the outer.
This simple truth carries more power than most people realize. Life is a constant flow of events, actions, and people's behaviors that lie outside of our influence. No matter how much we try, we cannot dictate what others say, how they act, or how the world unfolds around us. The weather changes, circumstances shift, people disappoint, and strangers can act without consideration. Yet in all this chaos, there remains one unshakable point of power, our own response. That is where freedom truly begins. When someone insults you, the insult itself is nothing more than words carried by air. On their own, they hold no sting. It is only when you receive them, interpret them, and allow them to settle in your heart that they gain force. If you meet the same words with indifference, they dissolve into nothing.
This is the power of mastering the inner world.
No matter what is said or done, you remain in command of how it touches your spirit. Others may throw stones, but you decide whether to pick them up and carry their weight. It is natural for people to seek control over the external. We want fairness, respect, kindness, and predictable order. But the outer world was never designed to bend to individual wishes. People have their own minds, their own flaws, their own storms raging inside them. Expecting them to act according to our desires is like expecting the wind to blow only when it pleases us. The disappointment that follows is inevitable, because we are wishing for what cannot be. Instead of wrestling with what lies outside us, the wiser path is to guard the inner fortress. You cannot silence the noise of the crowd, but you can keep silence within. You cannot prevent others from behaving rudely, but you can prevent your peace from being stolen. You cannot force life to go your way, but you can walk through its twists with steady steps. This shift is not weakness, but strength in its highest form. It is the strength of choosing where to place your energy. Imagine a storm beating against the walls of a house. If the walls are weak, the storm enters and wrecks everything inside. If the walls are strong, the storm passes, and the house remains untouched. Your mind is that house. The storms will come in the form of anger from others, betrayal, unfairness, or simple everyday annoyances. But the storm is never the true danger.
The true danger is when you let it break through and disturb the calm within.
To control the inner is to recognize that every reaction is a choice. You may not stop the event, but you can stop the chain that follows: irritation, resentment, rage. When you break that chain, you hold mastery over yourself. This is the kind of control that cannot be taken from you, no matter how turbulent the outer world becomes. Perception shapes reality, and this truth changes everything about how we experience life. Events in themselves are neither good nor bad, they simply happen. A delay, a harsh word, a loss, a sudden change. These are facts, occurrences in the flow of time. It is the human mind that paints them with color, attaching labels like unfair, tragic, insulting, or unbearable. What disturbs us is not the raw event, but the meaning we give it. Two people can go through the same situation and walk away with entirely different emotions because their judgments, not the situation itself, define their experience. Consider the example of being caught in traffic. The cars are lined up, the minutes are ticking by, and nothing moves. For one person, this becomes a nightmare, a breeding ground for irritation and anger. They grip the steering wheel, curse under their breath, and feel their energy drain away. Another person, in the same situation, turns on music, takes the delay as a chance to breathe, and accepts it as part of life. The external event is identical, but the reality each person lives is different because perception, not the road, created the true experience. When we forget this principle, we give the outside world control over our emotions. We allow a stranger's comment to ruin our mood, a small inconvenience to spoil our entire day, or an unexpected setback to make us feel like failures. Yet nothing outside carries that power on its own. It is we who hand it over by judging events in ways that hurt us. If we remember that events are neutral until we interpret them, we reclaim authority over how we feel. This perspective does not deny that pain, loss, or injustice exist. It does not ask us to pretend life is perfect. What it does is remind us that even within difficulty, our interpretation can either deepen the wound or help us endure with strength. A setback can be labeled as the end, or it can be seen as an opportunity to grow. An insult can be taken as a wound to pride, or it can be dismissed as meaningless noise from someone who does not control your worth. Reality is not simply what happens to us, it is how we frame what happens. When we see this clearly, we stop being prisoners of circumstance. We understand that no event has absolute power to disturb us unless we choose to view it as disturbing. This truth grants freedom because it places responsibility back where it belongs, inside our own perception. Life becomes lighter because instead of demanding that the world change, we learn to change how we see the world. In that shift, peace is no longer a fragile gift of fortune but a state we create within ourselves, independent of what unfolds outside. Detach from ego, for anger is often nothing more than pride in disguise. When someone speaks against us, challenges our opinion, or fails to show us the respect we think we deserve, the fire that rises inside is rarely about truth or justice. It is about the self wanting to be seen, validated, and affirmed. Ego whispers that we must win the argument, defend our honor, and prove our superiority. Yet this need to be right in every moment is the very chain that binds us to anger and robs us of peace.
Think of the times you felt the strongest urge to lash out.
Was it truly because of the gravity of the situation, or because your pride was wounded? A careless remark from a colleague, a dismissive gesture from a stranger, or even a disagreement among friends, none of these have the power to shake the foundations of life. Yet they spark fires inside us because the ego takes them personally. It transforms small incidents into attacks on identity. The more tightly we cling to our sense of self-importance, the more fragile we become, for anything that touches it feels like an unbearable offense. Releasing ego does not mean diminishing yourself or letting others walk over you. It means recognizing that your worth does not depend on winning battles of opinion or forcing others to acknowledge your greatness.
The truth needs no defense.
Reality remains what it is, no matter who denies it. The one who stands secure within does not need to argue with every voice that challenges them. Detachment from ego is not weakness, it is strength that rises above petty disputes. When you let go of the constant need to prove yourself right, something remarkable happens.
Silence begins to feel stronger than shouting.
Walking away feels more powerful than winning an argument.
Forgiveness feels like victory, not surrender.
By removing ego from the equation, situations that once seemed unbearable lose their weight. An insult becomes empty sound. A disagreement becomes an exchange of perspectives rather than a battlefield. Even failure itself loses its sting, because the ego is no longer demanding perfection as proof of worth. Anger, when examined closely, often hides fear, the fear of being seen as less, the fear of losing status, the fear of not being enough. Ego feeds these fears, convincing us that we must guard our image at all costs. But when you detach, you realize no insult can make you less, no defeat can take away your dignity, and no opinion defines who you are. Your value is not up for debate, and therefore, there is nothing to defend. Freedom from ego brings calm because you no longer take everything personally. What others say or do reflects their own state of mind, not your essence. Their judgments are mirrors of themselves, not measures of you. By letting go of pride, you create space within that cannot be pierced by the trivial sparks of offense. This is how anger loses its grip and peace becomes your natural state. Choose calm as strength, for remaining calm is not weakness but mastery over the self. In a world that often equates loudness with power and aggression with authority, calmness can seem passive, as if it were a sign of surrender. Yet in truth, calmness is the highest form of control, for it means you rule yourself even when the world around you is in chaos. Anyone can shout when provoked, anyone can lose their temper when frustrated, but it takes true strength to stand steady, to hold the ground of peace when everything urges you to break. Calm is not the absence of feeling, it is the ability to keep feeling in its proper place. Emotions will always rise like waves, anger, fear, irritation, even sorrow, but calmness is the anchor that keeps you from being swept away. It does not deny the storm, it simply refuses to let the storm decide the direction of your life.
When you stay calm, you gain clarity.
You see options that anger blinds you to, you choose words that rage would destroy, and you walk paths that impulsiveness would have closed.
Calmness is strategy, wisdom, and discipline all at once.
Think of a leader in a moment of crisis. When panic spreads through the crowd, the leader who shouts and trembles only adds to the chaos. But the leader who speaks calmly, who does not allow fear to twist their judgment, becomes a source of stability for everyone else. People naturally gravitate toward calmness because it radiates confidence and control. In this way, calm is not only self-mastery but also influence, a quiet force that shapes the environment without noise. Remaining calm also protects your energy. Anger drains, stress exhausts, and conflict consumes. The more often you give in to agitation, the weaker you become, both physically and mentally. Calmness conserves strength by preventing the unnecessary waste of energy on things that do not matter. It allows you to respond rather than react, to act with purpose rather than lash out in impulse. To remain calm is to choose efficiency over chaos, progress over destruction. The one who stays calm cannot be easily manipulated. When others try to provoke you, they expect an eruption, a reaction they can control. If you remain steady, their power dissolves. Calmness makes you untouchable, for no insult, no provocation, no sudden event can command your inner state.
In this way, calmness is armor, silent, invisible, and unbreakable.
Most importantly, calmness turns life into a smoother path. Daily irritations lose their sting, arguments lose their fire, and disappointments lose their weight. What once felt unbearable becomes manageable, not because the world has changed, but because you have. To stay calm is to walk through storms without being torn apart by them, to meet hostility without carrying it within, to live with a strength that needs no display. This is not weakness but the purest form of power. See offense as a test, because every annoyance is an opportunity to practice patience and discipline. Life places before us countless situations that can disturb our peace. An unkind word, a dismissive gesture, a broken promise, or even the smallest inconveniences like noise, delays, or mistakes by others. At first glance, these feel like obstacles, irritations meant to frustrate us. But if we shift our perspective, we can begin to see them as exercises, like weights in a gym that strengthen us when lifted with consistency. Offense becomes less about what was done to us and more about how we can use the moment to sharpen our character. When someone offends you, you stand at a crossroads. One path is the common one: react with anger, answer harshness with harshness, and carry bitterness inside. This path is easy to take, for it requires no effort, only instinct. But it also leaves you weaker, because every time you give in to offense, you show that your emotions can be controlled by others. The other path is the higher one. You pause, you breathe, and you choose patience. By doing so, you demonstrate mastery over yourself, and in that mastery, you grow stronger. The offense has become a test you passed, not a wound you carry. It helps to think of offense as a mirror. It reflects not just the flaws of the other person but also the strength or weakness of your own discipline. If you erupt at every slight, you see clearly that there is work to be done within. If you hold steady, calm, and unmoved, you see the progress you have made in building patience. In this way, the world constantly provides free lessons for those willing to learn. Each annoying moment is an invitation to train the mind and to forge greater resilience. Small offenses are especially powerful as training grounds. If you cannot handle a minor insult or a trivial inconvenience, how will you endure the heavier blows that life inevitably brings? Treat the small tests with seriousness, not resentment, for they prepare you for the greater trials ahead. Just as an athlete builds strength by lifting manageable weights before attempting heavier ones, you strengthen your patience by enduring small annoyances with grace. Over time, your threshold for irritation expands, and situations that once unsettled you lose all power. This practice also creates freedom. When you see offense as a test rather than a threat, you no longer feel the need to defend your pride or retaliate. You rise above the moment, and in rising above, you are untouchable. The offender expected to stir anger, but instead became the unknowing assistant in your training. Their action, meant to harm, turned into the very exercise that built your strength. This shift in mindset transforms life itself into a classroom where every irritation becomes a lesson, every insult becomes a challenge, and every offense becomes a chance to grow into a calmer, stronger, more disciplined version of yourself. Focus on the higher self and remember to ask in moments of irritation or conflict, will this matter tomorrow or a year from now? If not, why waste your peace today? Much of what troubles us in daily life is fleeting, a spark that burns brightly for a moment but quickly fades into nothing. Yet in that moment, we often treat it as if it were the end of the world. We lose sleep over words spoken in haste, we replay small arguments in our heads, we allow minor inconveniences to carry the weight of disasters. In truth, very little of what angers us has any lasting importance. What lingers is not the event itself, but the way we clung to it, allowed it to settle in our hearts, and gave it more significance than it deserved.
The eager self sees beyond the present sting.
It recognizes that time is the greatest filter of what truly matters. A rude comment that feels unbearable today will be forgotten in days, just as most arguments from years ago now seem trivial when looked at from a distance. To focus on the higher self is to train the mind to apply that perspective now, in the heat of the moment, rather than only after time has passed. When you ask yourself whether this will matter in a year, you give your mind space to step back, detach, and recognize the smallness of most offenses. This question becomes a shield against needless anger. The lower self demands immediate defense. It insists that every slight be answered, every wound avenged, every opinion defended. It thrives on pride and the illusion that constant struggle preserves dignity. But the higher self seeks peace. It knows dignity is not lost by letting go, and strength is not proven by shouting. The higher self understands that protecting inner calm is more valuable than winning temporary victories in arguments that will soon be forgotten. Life is short, and the energy we spend in anger is energy stolen from joy, growth, and peace. Each time we hold on to an offense, we pay with hours or even days of unrest for something that will vanish in memory. To ask if it will matter tomorrow is to guard against this waste. It reminds us that peace is a treasure not to be exchanged for the cheap price of annoyance. This does not mean ignoring every problem. Some matters do require attention and action, but even then, they are best faced with clarity, not rage. Calm decisions build lasting solutions, while emotional reactions often deepen conflict. By focusing on the higher self, you decide not to shrink to the level of every irritation but to rise above, measuring what deserves your energy and what does not. In doing so, you create a life that is lighter, freer, and less burdened by the noise of the moment. The higher self sees the horizon, not just the pebble on the path, and by keeping that vision, you protect your peace from being wasted on what time will erase.